It's time for PerfBytes.
What the f*** is PerfBytes? The fourth square meal of the day. Still PerfBytes. Waffles, microwave ready. Blobbity blah, blobbity blah. Nutritional value to your brain.
It's time for PerfBytes with your hosts Mark Tomlinson and James Pulley. PerfBytes. Whatever.
Hey, it's PerfBytes Live. Happy 4th of July with your somewhat full of barbecue and fat stuffs and coleslaw and potato salad and wine from South Africa and wine and Chewbacca's here with us. Very good, as you'll hear. James, happy 4th of July. How are you? Okay, so this is a live broadcast of PerfBytes. It's like old times, right? We used to do this. Okay, we'll have to pause for just a minute to introduce the people. You actually can say something.
Yes. Sorry.
Do you have an allergy or something?
With all the food, I was thinking I'd take a small nap or something.
We would nap, and alcohol has that ability to maybe make you a little drowsy. But I'm doing well. We had plenty of pig.
I'm sorry, a lot of people did not make it. But, that's more pig for us.
We're celebrating the people who did make it here. So maybe we should, before we go too much further, we'll introduce who's here at the PerfBytes Southern Command. Chewbacca's already made himself aware. So, Chewbacca, yeah, I'm happy to have you on PerfBytes as well.
And remember, let the Wookiee win because droids do not pull your arms out of their sockets.
Exactly. That's very good. Han Solo, some of the best advice we've ever heard from the older generations before cell phones existed.
Yes. And I guess we should go around the table?
We should go around the table. PerfBytes Live, 4th of July. There's always a live audience. And our guest today in Monroe, North Carolina, is my lovely wife, Martha, also known as the sexy Irish voice of PerfBytes that you hear on the intro music, right?
Hello.
Yes, so that's Martha. And she'll be offering relative advice to people who don't understand what the hell we're doing on this podcast anyway. Because you've been listening the entire time. 20 episodes, right?
That's right. I'm committed. Fully committed.
Fully committed. You should be committed.
Do you have a white dinner jacket with extra long arms to go along with that commitment?
I do. I do indeed.
Yes,
lovely
I do. Bow tie right around the front of it.
Yes, and all I have to say about that is...
Yeah.
All right.
Don't let Chewbacca speak for you.
You can't argue with that.
No, you can't. You really can't.
And Greg joins us. Greg.
Hello.
Greg, what's your last name, actually?
Kudos. Like MS-DOS.
Yes. And how do you come to join us? You and James, you guys known each other since back in the day, right?
Yeah, James and I did some time on CompuServe together, supporting, I don't remember what
Microsoft Windows.
Yeah, Windows.
Wow. That was Windows 3.1.
Was it?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Yes.
I remember it had something to do with... modems, I think they were called.
Yes. We spent a long time talking about the advantages of the 16550 UR.
There you go.
As I recall. And not to get too technical, but Greg doesn't like to speak about himself often, but we call him the grandfather of Windows Update.
Is that endearing to you? Is that not something you cherish?
It's mixed feelings.
Mixed feelings, yeah. All right. We're not going to press you.
Well, when I get those 1,000 updates on Update Thursday or whatever the day it is, I always think of you, Greg, and sometimes it's kindly.
They used to happen willy-nilly, and then sort of the enterprise, once Windows was in the enterprise, right? Now we had to sort of consolidate to key days in the month when you would get all the pushes, and there's thousands of companies around the world that have to take. So thanks to you, that whole technology, you're keeping the world more secure actually now because you planted the seed for that idea of frequent updates.
Well, I think what's important is every couple of months we have to go in and uncheck the Internet Explorer download. And I consider that to be a victory.
What version? We're on IE 1084 now?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still only, 8 connections?
Yeah, and I think, what version does LoadRunner support? It's LoadRunner version 9 or something?
6 still.
6.
6.
Okay.
I mean, like any good technology from another vendor, it's still stuck on... No, I'm kidding. We know LoadRunner supports IE 9. I think actually the latest L52 supports IE 10 even.
Yeah, but not quite that IE 10,000 though.
That's right. That's exactly right. So Greg, thanks. I'm glad you're with us. Greg may join us for a little perf rant a little later on about user experience and something from a few years ago, like user experience under load and performance. So we'll get back to that, which was actually a pretty riveting conversation. But since today's show is live, James, you're manning the Twitter feed.
Yes.
And also the mailbox. We have info@perfbytes.com or ask@perfbytes.com. You can send us an email. And we'll actually receive your email and answer your questions. And you can send us a Twitter @perfbytes.com. And we'll actually see that. We know we have one of the frequent contributors, Mr. Scott Moore, will be joining us later on.
Really?
Yes.
Weren't we just speaking about Scott Moore and
We were
something related to him? But
the fact that he was... Yes,
what
you're
was that,
right.
Chewy?
No, Chewbacca also enjoys scotch, and I think now that he's safe at home, Scott Moore, much like Chewbacca's original role with Han Solo, trafficking kinds of merchandise, right? Weren't they bootleggers or smugglers, right?
Yeah.
Scott Moore, who took a 6,000-mile journey around the West Coast, arrived back at his house with, I don't know, maybe 40, 60, 80 bottles worth of different kinds of alcohol, and all of
I keep going back to that picture and thinking about the people that mentioned 420 in personal ads.
Yeah.
And thinking, Scott, the revenue agents might be interested in speaking with you about all the liquor you've been carrying across
state
lines.
Yes, into tri-counties. Do you want to call? We could try him right now.
Sure.
Let me call him right now, and we'll
Call him Scott or the authorities?
Scott.
Okay, you dial up the tax liquor control bar.
have
What's
the
that?
evidence.
ATF is the alcohol.
We'll see which one we get a hold of
ATF,
first.
Let me call him back here and see if we can get him on the phone. See, he just called me. Here we go. This should be his home phone. Yeah, there's his mobile phone right here. I'm going to put him on speaker. Hopefully, we'll have him turn his radio down so he can hear it. Yeah, Mr. Moore. Hopefully he's listening in the background.
Hello?
Hey, Scott, it's Mark and James here, broadcasting live in PerfBytes.
Well, hi, fellas. It's good to be with you today on this 4th of July.
Yes.
And we feel a kinship to you since I saw your ribs on the grill, or excuse me, in the smoker on Facebook, and we had ribs as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is the day that brings most good performance engineers together, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. No matter where you are, we can connect through modern science and technology. My real question is...
And pig.
And pig.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
celebration of the pig.
Oh, yes.
You are doing a pork barbecue, or is there any beef involved?
No, it's all St. Louis-style spare ribs this year. I have traveled around the United States over the past month. The best barbecue that I personally have enjoyed is in St. Louis. So I'm celebrating that by having some St. Louis-style ribs.
I like that. And
Well, you can be excused, Scott, since you did not come to North Carolina over the last month.
he was on the other. He's on the West Coast. He went the other way.
That's why he said the finest he's experienced in the last month.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so we can remain friends, Scott.
Yeah, I'll have to go east next time I travel and head your way, for sure.
And venture into the obscure counties in North Carolina that prepare, again, sort of, I don't know, tomato-based stuff,
Ketchup.
ketchup-based ribs, and then there's a mustard They do mustard type.
Yeah, and
barbecue.
there's like a little mayonnaise zone, but
There's a mayonnaise
That's
we all
wrong.
hate them.
That's wrong.
Yeah,
yeah.
this
wrong.
reviled, rebuked by others. But so we were just discussing. Oh, by the way, Scott, I'm having an Ardbog right now. The first I've tasted of it. It's actually quite good. I like it. It's not super salty, but it definitely has a little peat kick to it. That's for sure.
I agree. I enjoyed it as well, and it's nice to know that I'm up in the James Pulley Friend Index after the Art Blog experience.
Yes, I think
It re-indexed me.
that's right. So we were just discussing the copious amounts of contraband that you had transported across the United States. You had no incidents with any ATF or authorities or revenue agents whatsoever?
No, it was a smooth sailing all the way home, and I did obey every speed limit, traffic, regulations of whatever general area.
Right.
I believe that actually causes you to stand out if you drive 55 in a 55 zone, Scott.
Yeah. Don't let him push you up or over double nickels, brother. And also in Oregon, you got to watch out for the easy rights, right? So at a stop sign, you don't have to stop. It's really a yield if you're turning right at a stop sign. I don't know if you picked up on that one.
I did. I just tried to blend in as best as I could, and just hope I could make it through to the next town. That's all.
Yes. So in the spirit of our 4th of July Independence Day, and one of the topics for PerfBytes show today is just talking about being independent. And I know you have a history from running independent businesses independently as a VAR, actually growing Northway Solutions to the size and sophistication it is now. What's your advice current day if somebody's thinking about going to become an independent performance consultant? What advice would you give them?
I would have to compare this to any other business that you're trying to jump into. You have to make a decision, and you can change this decision later on, but you have to make a decision up front. Do you want to be a businessman, or do you want to be a great performance engineer? I think those are not necessarily two separate things, and that you can't be both, but it's hard to pay attention to both. So when I started Load Pressure, if I had not had my wonderful wife Cynthia to help me handle all the back-end activities and helping me run the business, there's no way that I could have been out there in the front lines proving to customers that, we were starting the best performance testing company, out there in the Southeast U.S. So, I don't know any way today, especially with all of the things that you have to worry about from a taxes perspective, the paperwork you have to do, where one person can just jump into this thing and say, I'm going to be independent, I'm going to run my own company, and I'm going to be the boss of everything, and not have a whole lot of help behind you. So that's the first thing. And making the decision to be a businessman versus a performance engineer. When I started this company, it was about trying to raise the bar and trying to make something bigger than just myself. Helping to spread the information about performance testing process, joining up with people who agreed with what we thought was the right way to do things, and still, we're modifying our techniques all the time. We're trying to bring best practices around performance testing in everything that we do. I tried to bring in guys that agreed with that. That's how my company grew. If I was just simply a businessman without the other, then it would be, okay, well, let's just see how many bodies we can throw at X number of companies to have X number of growth rates, to have X number of margin. And I just think that you have to decide, first and foremost, which one you want to be. And I know that probably you and James and others in our profession agree that it's more about the performance engineering and the passion for it and the love for it versus the business. If the business grows, that's great. But it's about building something great first.
So Scott, I'm feeling a little challenged at this point because you have given a lot of your credit for success to your wife Cynthia, which paraphrased, every good man has a good woman behind him, and I'm challenged in that regard. and so I'm feeling a little depressed.
Yeah, sorry about
on
that.
this 4th of July.
It's just too bad for you.
Well, it doesn't have to be a wife, obviously, but you got to have.
Well, that's good that you mentioned that, given recent Supreme Court rulings. But I'm still challenged.
Yeah, it could be. Some people have family; they have a brother or a sister, or their partner.
It could be
Yeah.
Chewbacca.
Han Solo had Chewbacca.
Included in
That's
this.
enough. That's just sit down over there, Chewie. Jesus, good Lord.
I think the best advice I was ever given before I ever started my company was that there were 3 things that you would need. Really good resources that you would need starting a company. The first is a good accountant. The second is a good lawyer. And the third is a good doctor to have to deal with the other 2. So,
Yeah, that's incredibly sound advice.
Yeah, it is.
Along with, taking Cynthia out of the equation, making sure you have excellent support from your family, your friends, the closest person in your life, as you go off into this, stepping off onto the deep end, because in many cases, taking the 4th of July as the date here, you're acting as a revolutionary. You're going against the trend. You are stepping out into the void. You're signing your own death warrant if things don't work out well.
Yep.
And you're a radical.
Scott, I have one more question for you. Not to cut you off at all, but at what time in your career you'd worked for different companies and you'd worked as a consultant attached to other corporations? What's a good time nowadays? Like when you're hiring people or looking at them, like how many years experience should someone have, especially in performance, before they consider stepping out kind of independently?
great question. I think it all depends on the technical background the person has, but let's say that they have a technical background, they worked in IT already, and they start jumping into performance engineering, I would say give yourself 4 or 5 years minimum, because you need some experience, even working with other companies, you need some experience treating internal customers as if you're a consultant outside, working with external customers. Get the consultant mindset and start building that way before you start a business and go out on your own. Because just because you're a great performance engineer doesn't mean you're going to be able to run your own business independently, even if it's just a one-person shop. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. That's why they say most businesses don't last more than 3 to 5 years. I think it's even 2 years now. And it's just because great technical minds don't necessarily make the best business people.
Got it.
Some people need to work for other people.
Yeah. Now you also have some business partners around you, Prashant, right, who works with you. Would you guys say you have a balance between being sort of technically expertise versus business? You have a mix? Is a balance if you have partners involved or other mentors that you work with?
I did have a mentor, and my mentor actually works with me now. His name is Brian Copeland, and he's probably the biggest brain around quality assurance process that I've ever met. The guy should have written the book around the QA process in IT, as far as I'm concerned. I have a great opportunity to work with him every day. Prashant being my partner, it was, we had known each other for years before we partnered. He does have additional skill sets as I do. In fact, when we merged from being load tester to the new company name, Northwest Solutions Group, so we could do other things in the quality space, working with other products, etc. But the biggest balance was actually non-technical, because Prashant is this, I'm the guy who wants to jump out and smack people upside the head when they're so stupid in first reaction, which is probably not the wisest thing to do as a businessman.
Nothing wrong.
Because I'm so passionate about what I do, But Prashant is a very laid-back guy who takes things in, thinks methodically about it, and says, I think this is the way that we should approach this. What do you think? Keeps everybody calm in the room, and I've definitely made much better decisions with him than without him. So having a partner to balance you is a great idea.
Even if you're independent, you have peers and other people to kind of bounce your ideas off of about the right way to handle situations, which a lot of us would take for granted when we're working for a company. You're kind of in the system and you're in a team of some sort or a department, and you kind of work within the boundaries of that. And to James's point, when you're independent, you're revolutionary. You're kind of on your own, so it's good to have peers to bounce things off of. For sure.
Absolutely. It's always the case. And that also gets back to business building. How good of a social networker are you? You've got to build a social network, even if it's not within a company, outside of your company, that you can roll up ideas on all the time, because none of us have the answers to everything. Everybody has not tested every single technology platform. So we've got to have other people that we can rely on. And hopefully one day when I do know everything, I'll be able to share that with you guys. But so far, I'm usually the one asking more of the questions.
Okay, in that spirit, since today is just a PerfBytes live episode, and we've had you on live before, Scott, we have a couple other questions coming in on the chat. But would you like to ask a question of our small PerfBytes group here today? Any question, anything goes. Doesn't have to necessarily be performance. Could be something else. Is there anything on the top of your head that you're thinking about?
Well, of the people in the room that are independent or have worked in smaller companies, I should say, what do you feel was the biggest aid or the biggest help to you in growing your business and getting the message out that, hey, I'm here, I'm a great performance engineer, I want work, and getting work? What's the biggest thing that's helped you?
Well, I'll say not growing the business as much, but touching what you said earlier about having those valuable resources. Make sure your insurance is reviewed. And I kind of think about that as growth, because I lost a lot of money in resources for not being covered on E&O. Mm-hmm. And that's a lesson you don't want to learn. So that's just my experience.
You don't want to learn the hard way.
Right.
Yeah, learn it. So you got the tip here, and you can send questions if you want to hear more from Greg. Actually, we'll route it, but that's an interesting topic as well, just getting set up as you're a small corporation or something like that.
Well, one of the core challenges you have as a small business is building efficiency in the separation of responsibilities, accounting, marketing, sales. You have to wear a lot of hats. In larger organizations, you have the luxury of having people dedicated to those resources. Scott, you mentioned get a good accountant. That takes a lot of load off of you, especially at tax time. We're right at the end of the quarter right now. You have quarterly filings, fees that have to be paid. You know, that takes a lot of load off of you in that sense. But if you can find a way to build efficiencies even within a small organization, one person has more of a marketing background, an additional one has a social media background, another one has a technical background. Capitalize on that and leverage it and allow those efficiencies to develop naturally. There's going to be some cross-pollination in skills as you go across your organization, even a small one, but allow those anchors to develop so you can actually have some efficiencies even in a smaller organization.
Yeah. Well, I just started last year as solely independent one-man show, and I have to say, I couldn't have got my name out there if it weren't for all of the modern Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr and blogging and all of this stuff, which some of it is completely free, but it is not free from a time suck perspective, right? It just takes my time to be that intimate, right, with everything that's going on. The second thing I'll say, I found other supportive communities like the Software Test Pro, right? So I do a lot with STP. And I've been at the conferences, so finding in performance, it's one of the best communities to be attached to. To what you guys have grown in businesses, I mean, I'm fledgling independent accounting and that kind of stuff. Believe me, I was blown away this last year just trying to get it done. So I think that's actually good advice. I think to some extent, if I wanted to spend more time just learning tech, just learning performance, I would not go independent. Like you say, Scott, like if it's 4 or 5 years worth of experience before you go independent, you really should treat those kind of like a master's degree or a doctorate level degree, just studying as deep as you can go in a given technology, learning infrastructure for performance, storage, databases, app servers, code, the cloud, whatever sort of area you're in, have 1 or 2 key areas that are really, really deep. So you don't have to worry about any of this other business stuff. Like, nail that technology stuff first while you're working for other companies, like you say, James. And then when you go independent, you're kind of leveraging all of that and adding the business stuff later. So yeah. Any closing thoughts there, Scott?
Yeah, there's something that's been on my mind today since we've been doing the barbecue, and that is, and this could also be for Scotch as well. I've got a great analogy for independent performance engineers that are really good. There's independent bottlings of Scotch. They're rare, they're hard to get, they're usually very expensive, but people seek after them. They don't have to really advertise that they're out there. People seek them out and go to them. Same thing is true for barbecue. There's those little places on the side of the road that everybody knows about. They don't even need a sign. They're only there Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, but people seek them out. They get that culinary delight, And I think it's because in both cases, it's attention to the detail. When you go into a place to get something to eat, and it doesn't have to be barbecue only, but if you think of the first thing you get maybe is a beverage, and then maybe you get a side item or something, hors d'oeuvre or something. If they haven't paid attention to the details up front, you kind of know what you're going to get later on in the meal. And it's going to be, that's okay probably, but it's not something you're going to seek after. I think for independence, it's very important to be that former where you pay attention to the detail, and people will seek you out. And that prevents you from having to do all this marketing and advertising of yourself, because when people are sick, they know to call the doctor, and when they're really sick and they need a specialist, they find out who that person is to call. They get references, and they get to them. So be that person.
Yeah, so show your sharpness right away. Put your best hors d'oeuvre and best service right in the first experience as an independent, and sort of set yourself apart as a specialty, if I understand you right. I think that would be good advice, yeah.
And Scott, one question on the barbecue front. Are you as offended as I am with Texas Monthly's barbecue edition, that basically that all the best barbecue in the universe is isolated inside the country of Texas?
Yeah, that's a little far-fetched for me to believe. So I'm not there. I know Texans are pretty proud of the brisket, and I know there's various grades, right? There's human grade, there's mother-in-law grade, and then there's dog grade within all of that. But I don't get the whole thing.
Yeah, I would call it. Brisket is one particular kind of thing, right? I mean, there's only so many things you can do with a brisket.
That is barbecue in Texas, though. There's no other
thing. Right, exactly.
And here's the other thing to know. If you need to put sauce on brisket, you've totally done it wrong.
If you need to add something to make it a little bit more palatable and moist, something really screwed up long before that. Which, according to your analogy, is the same thing that you have to in performance engineering. So if you get to the results and analysis, and you got to start kind of pushing and elaborating, put a lot of sauce on the results, somebody screwed up long before they ran the test, I think, to extend the analogy. Okay, Scott, great to chat with you, man. Happy 4th of July to you and Cynthia. Glad you made it home safely.
Happy 4th of July to everybody there, and great to be with you again. Look forward to talking to you in the near future, too.
Yeah, and Scott, I will see you and Cynthia in August.
Looking forward to it, James. I got some special stuff here just for you.
I'll pack some stuff when I head your direction.
Thanks. All right.
Thanks, Scott. Talk to you later. All right. So that was some really pretty key advice there, actually. From a performance perspective, the last thing he talked about was being that specialist. And, we talk a lot in our podcast, because since our podcast is all about performance, right? We make the assumption that we're talking to a large audience. It's not a huge audience. I know from the listener numbers in PerfBytes, if you're listening right now or you're listening to this podcast, you're pretty rare. I'm talking to you on the other end of my microphone here. You're pretty rare. Your skills are pretty rare. And the more you know about performance...
And despite what a recruiter tells you that they have 100 more just like you...
Oh, they don't.
They don't. They have 100 more that say that they can do what you can do.
Yes, people who maybe drove a taxi. If you drive a taxi, that qualifies.
And
or if
that
you worked
gets,
in retail.
And that gets to the
if
whole...
you worked at Abercrombie and Fitch with your shirt off in the store, right? Then you can be a load tester, right?
I'm not going to comment on that.
I'm just trying to... I'm pulling stuff out of the air.
I'm just trying to reconcile how Abercrombie and Fitch went from supplying provisions to Teddy Roosevelt to what they are today. So, that's a whole other discussion.
I understand. Well, James, we're right at the bottom of the hour, and you know what time it is then, right?
Oh, God. Here he
Hello,
comes.
PerfBytes listeners. It's your old friend Satan here. It is with great esteem that I'm proud to introduce this week's edition of The News of the Damned.
Can you dig it?
There he is again.
The
You
screaming.
hear him in the background. He's screaming.
The screaming.
He's screaming again because his browser crashed right in the middle of his session.
Oh, yes.
That's exactly right. Okay.
I'm disturbed.
Is it the voice that's disturbing?
I don't know what it is. I live in that zone of the United States, which is known for being a very religious area. I'm not particularly religious, but the zone is. And, in fact, I think I had a card on my door this morning inviting me to a church.
Oh, my.
We saw that when we came in. Yeah.
So, but hearing Satan on the radio just kind of bothers me.
Well, I think you're being prejudiced. Actually, Satan he's probably got Twitter feed. He's got Tumblr. He's got a Facebook page. He should be on the radio. I understand. I've got Norwegian heritage. I have this affinity towards helmets with horns on them. Not a problem.
So I get that, but I'm still disturbed. Maybe it's the red skin. I don't know.
So who's joining us this week on the News of the Damned there, James?
Well, we have some people who have been with us before.
Really?
Myers in Australia. Website crashed last night as shoppers flocked to an online stock sale.
Ah.
Now, Mark, we've had this happen before with Myers.
Yes,
and I think we need to refer them to somebody in Australia that can help them because they seem to have a persistent problem. Now, Mark, who do we know in Australia who can help Myers?
Well, Gridinet. So Tim is in Gridinet.
Yeah.
Gridinet, Tim Koopmans. Actually, happy birthday to Tim Koopmans.
Oh.
It was either today or yesterday or today. Today in the U.S. or yesterday. So happy birthday to Tim.
Yeah.
And there's other folks as well. So JDS. Stuart Moncrief. And Mikhail Pogrebitsky, who's from Australia, Lodrino guy.
Yeah.
Moved to Melbourne. And they're all around Melbourne. So if you're hanging in Melbourne.
So if you're in Sydney, you're screwed, is what you're saying.
If you're in Sydney, you should just go party up and have a drink.
Okay.
And be fine.
Okay. But Myers needs...
Rev IT is in Sydney, and they meet in the middle in Canberra. So
okay. So Myers, you have your advice. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you're listening.
Handful of guys that you should call.
Yes. If you need actual email addresses, just drop us a note at info@perfbytes.com. We'll be happy to give you a referral. Next up, China. Country.
China again.
The country.
The country of China.
Yes, they put on an online petition system, which crashed on its first day of use.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, government...
Because no one in the history of IT has ever created a petition survey system, right? Ever.
Well, I guess the citizens of China really want to talk back to their government.
Oh.
I'm assuming this is a good thing.
I think it's good.
Assuming the government listens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to be fair.
So
everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe the Chinese government, maybe made some mistakes, but the people are talking, so it's time to listen.
Yes.
And there's no better way to listen than to build a website that crashes when people try to send you their messages.
Exactly. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
That's a shame.
Next up involves Marilyn Manson.
Oh, I dig Marilyn Manson. You were mentioning that, Martha, you like Marilyn Manson.
I dig Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, he's kind of a...
Really?
In a big way.
I want to understand this better.
Okay, what would you like to understand?
I don't listen to Marilyn Manson music, so I want to
Is
understand.
it more the guy, the persona, or
the music? It's definitely a persona more than the music.
Yeah.
Not to offend people who are fans of the music, but I love the persona.
Oh, the multicolor eyes.
He
that
just messes with your conceptions of how things should be.
okay.
And he's incredibly consistent, kind of like Lady Gaga, just always kind of tweaking with your expected patterns.
your default perspectives on reality,
which is awesome.
Well, so Marilyn Manson appears on a website for Mr. Oizo, which is a French website.
Very French.
French visionary Quentin Duplot, aka known as Mr. Oizo, blah blah blah. So Marilyn Manson appears on his website, and boom. It crashes. Boom.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know whether this speaks volumes about Marilyn Manson or Mr. Oizo.
Mr. Oizo. With a name like Oizo,
so
my guess is it's Marilyn Manson.
So Mark, we've kind of gotten away from the process of making recommendations during News of the Damned for how someone might have avoided this. So what's your thought, given Marilyn Manson? This is a very predictable event. It's a celebrity. What's your thought on how they might have avoided this type of crash situation?
Well, first of all, anytime you're dealing with fame, and most of these ticket sales guys that go down, just like we did on the last show, remember you searched for some particular phrase that we bleeped out? Which is very
I'm not allowed to say that anymore. Yes.
But it was a really popular phrase, like 200 some million hits.
It was a very popular
right? So
phrase.
if you go to Google and you put in Marilyn Manson, and let's say you're Dr. What's his name? Dr. Oizo?
Mr. Oizo.
Mr. Oive?
Oizo.
Sorry, I'm going to be disrespectful, but it's a little
No, that would be in
French.
Israel. Mr. Oive.
Mr. Oive. Oi, it's human. Yes. But the... I just do a Google search. How many hits do you get comparatively for Marilyn Manson? You should know that putting that. I mean,
so if Oizo is less than Manson, then you make steps to ensure your site.
Yeah, and I also this is something where this is purely promotional content. Probably a lot of static content. Now, this could be CDN. Put it in a CDN. Put it in a static page. What's your origin server setup? And also, if this is, look at Marilyn Manson, US-wise and international-wise, totally famous. So you're looking at distribution. So you might look at a CDN network and start putting multiple origin servers that replicate out to other locations around the globe versus trying to serve everything from, your basement closet in France, Mr. Oizo. No offense to Mr. Oizo. Technology is hard.
On a totally tangential note, if one were to put something up about Lady Gaga, you have to be aware that there are monsters which is the name of her fans.
Pause up.
Right? Pause up.
Pause
right?
up.
Right?
Got it.
And I've just outed myself earlier today as a Cumberbitch. If there are fans of Benedict Cumberbatch out there,
yes.
You would know if you're preparing to say something, out in the world or send something out in the world. That Cumberbitches will get there in droves. I am sure Marilyn Manson has a similar, I don't know what it is, but has a similar fan group that might flood.
I believe it's called Manson's Family, except I thought most of them were in jail. No, different Manson.
Different
Manson.
Wrong.
Okay.
Let's put it this way: if you are of lesser fame and you're making probably a contractual arrangement with the more famous person, be it Marilyn Manson or
do your research.
Do your research, but secondarily, there's probably a business arrangement. So, is the terms in that you need access to the information? Hey, the IT department that supports MarilynManson.com or all these things, what are your average throughputs? Can I have a liaison with your traffic so I can coordinate my traffic with your traffic? It could be that they have more elaborate investment in their web presence, LadyGaga.com, whatever it is. So, you can even legally bake it in as an SLA that says we're the smaller guy. If you want this relationship to go well as a promotion, you're going to actually host the page on Mr. Oizo is going to say MarilynManson.com Industries, Marilyn.LLC. Work it into the contract. If you're a smaller media company and there's a larger media company, they have more resources. Work it out. I think this is totally avoidable, right? Either through technical means or legal contractual means. That's my thought.
I'm frightened by the whole Maryland.LLC, but I get your point.
But it may not be LLC, right? It may be full-on S Corp, C Corp, you name it.
Yeah. So the next one comes to us from Mr. Kudos. I don't know how to say this. This is a point load situation involving outrage over a police shooting of a dog in Hawthorne, California.
Which is a horrible story.
Why is my name the lead in this?
You're an audience, that's right. No, there's no video.
No.
Yes, there is.
There's no
we
video.
don't share a video.
No, we don't share video.
We also don't encourage people, if you've had a birth and you invite people over to your
No,
house,
no.
don't show the video of your birth.
And
Just
by the way,
and don't post your ultrasound
Of
on
your
Facebook.
birth or the
It could be
the
your
birth
own
of your
birth.
child?
I don't know, the birth of your child.
Okay.
There are certain things.
all I know is that when this
should
child
stay
becomes
private.
5, they will not want to have that video exist. So
That's right.
So anyway, this is a.
I know. It's the entrails that you see. These awful things at the end. It's awful.
Okay, getting back to this whole situation, we're going to avoid really discussing about the nature of the incident, which is a horrible incident.
I know where you're going.
But it's a point load situation where police engaged in activity which resulted in a video being created.
Unexpected.
Unexpected.
Even probably the cop feels terrible that it happened. Yeah.
Which resulted in a whole bunch of people going to a website to see the video, and then, the site crashed.
Yes.
You can expect unexpected load. And Mark, I think this gets back to your issue regarding a CDN finding some way to cache that video externally, host it externally.
Put it on YouTube. It'll instantly be balanced out there.
Exactly. Put it on YouTube. Get it off your core site.
Yeah.
But find a way to improve the performance and things of that nature.
But in the last episode, we even talked about surviving point load. It's having that second static copy of other parts of your website, be able to flip that reference over and point to a static version of the page.
Oh, absolutely.
Just especially if you're in the news or
if load gets to X, then just
automatically
redirect
bump
to a static version of the website.
Totally avoidable. And that automation is pretty simple. Most load balancers have an API. You can do that.
Yeah.
Very easy.
And the last one, we cannot do a News of the Damned without having something involving concerts.
Concerts and tickets and Ticketmaster, but what was this one?
In this case, it was Ticketmaster and Penn State, famous for having that coach having a show that the naked guy runs across the field and up into the stands for many years. Remember that?
Oh, it's famous for a lot more than that.
Have you watched?
By the way, I knew that guy.
You knew them, yeah.
That ran naked across the street.
The
No,
streaker.
I know who the streaker is. I'll reserve his name because he's now a very religious man, and he probably would not want that disclosed.
It was very
but this
godlike.
involves Penn State Athletics is paying a penance by releasing an additional 1,500 seats for freshmen. And basically, there was a rush on the seats.
Yep. And took down the site.
Point load. And Ticketmaster generally is very good.
I know. Ticketmaster is good. So what was so special about 1,500 seats? They sell out stadiums in the 10,000 seat stadium.
They sell out Cowboy Stadium in 5 minutes for guys like Glenn Beck.
That's crazy. Or the Rolling Stones are on tour right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't heard anything in the news
Hold on. Alton Brown is on tour.
Alton Brown is on tour.
Yeah.
Everyone, we encourage you to go visit Alton Brown.
If you like the humor of PerfBytes, you should go see Alton
would
Brown.
love it.
Yeah.
All right, so again, great ticket sales enters. And again, how do you tell Ticketmaster, who usually survives point load like this, what to do, right? What's the advice of this is, what the heck's happening with Penn State freshmen? Are they just rabid, or is it their parents that are rabid about these tickets?
Can I ask the outsider question? Why do all these ticket sites suck?
Well, Ticketmaster, this is a rarity with Ticketmaster. Normally, Ticketmaster is the exception. They handle everything.
So what happened?
But these other sites are usually one-offs, and they're not expecting this mass influx of load immediately onto the system, where people are buying up blocks of tickets, and then they're going to resell them for profit along with a baseball cap, and tickets at face value, baseball cap at $100 or something.
So they're not set up well for profiteering?
Well, they're not set up well for handling the immediate point load, and that's a very specific engineering challenge to handle that. And I think we had an incident in the state of Pennsylvania, a fairgrounds incident involving a concert. We have a lot of incidents in the UK, which is also not in the news this week, which is kind of nice. Second show in a row where we haven't had a UK concert failure. So it is a very specific condition. You have to engineer for it. And that Ticketmaster failed in this case is actually kind of interesting. We should probably go through LinkedIn at our contacts at Ticketmaster, see if we can find out what happened, get a little bit more of a backstory here, because normally they just wouldn't fail. They have a very specific engineered solution to handle this point load situation.
There is something I can tell you that I'm aware of is going on potentially at Ticketmaster and the such is they're always trying to flex their business. So if you sign up with Ticketmaster as a venue, and there's different ways of being a merchant at venue and stuff, you can sign up for premium service through to all of your stuff go through Ticketmaster, or there's lesser levels of service that you can sign up and Ticketmaster takes less of a cut depending on what venue you are.
So promotional versus hosting.
Exactly. So you can imagine that the IT support and resources behind those different levels of services, I hate to say it, just like anything in business, you get what you pay for. And so if you're a small venue and you can't afford the full service, you're probably not getting the most robust systems behind. I mean, IT is a business inside a business, right? So that's kind of how that goes. It kind of sucks. But we always hear of the individual venues, like the Sydney Opera House that went down, or the stuff in UK.
And let's not forget about the Book of Mormon, who takes out
twice. Took out New York.
Took out Denver. Took out Washington D.C.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the news of the damned on this 4th of July. Which brings us, actually,
Mr. Kudos, I believe this is your first news of the damned.
What do you think of the news of the damned, Greg?
Oh, I liked it. I just assumed this was a boring show, but it's pretty good.
It's actually pretty good. So we're
Chewy, have a word with Mr. Kudos.
What's your opinion? Exactly. So I agree. Screw Darth Vader. That guy is a total creep. He doesn't even have legs, or does he? He doesn't have legs. So one of the topics there's a couple different questions coming in, but Greg, we had a little bit of a rant earlier about you were saying UAT, user acceptance testing, or what I would say is user experience or usability testing is potentially out, and you were saying that Apple has something to do with it?
Yeah, my understanding is Steve just decided how things were going to be and really never asked anybody what they thought as far as the consumers. And I'm just wondering if people that think that they are as smart as him just follow that path. Things happen. We were discussing YouTube earlier, that there's just some functionality that makes no sense. You have to dig very deep to find a way to get to your inbox, for instance.
Comments, inbox, the actual
Google Drive, and the interface changes that have happened in the last couple months.
Crazy.
Oh my God!
Yeah, taking some crap. So it calls into question. There's a couple things. That one was this. We coined it, I think, 2 years ago on an online summit at SDP. Was user experience under load, and it was the classic. What is my user experience, not just standalone? So Steve Souders, if you're familiar with performance optimization, web performance optimization, we have a whole episode on it, which is like, what are all the mistakes I make with the client rendering of a web page that makes it slow?
Right.
And I think the YouTube example, which was, by the way, the default view, this just to cue people in YouTube, the default view used to have the posting date of the given video, so you could see if it were like real-time news happening now, you could see this was posted 2 hours on this date at this time, kind of like a blog you see the date entry. Well, I think there's a trend not only for political reasons, or I'm going to kind of make my dates ambiguous so I can make claims that my news was there before the other guy and such. So people get a little blurry on that. I don't know if you agree on that, but technically, for performance reasons, it seems like with YouTube, they made the default dateless, which could mean that they don't want to do a lookup on an index for a time series date column. We just did database performance 2 weeks ago on
Yes.
PerfBytes talking about indexes, and of course date is a huge index, particularly for very large queries into a very large thing. So there could be a performance optimization reason that people are making usability questions. Now, do you remember in your long history of building software and advising people? I mean, what's really the rant here? You think that these decisions are not based in real human use?
Yeah, I wonder if anybody is asking the consumer anymore, and that could mean that they are, and I don't like their answer, or it could mean that they just don't do that anymore. But even at Microsoft, which of course used to get, ironically, sand thrown into its face, even though it was bigger, we did bring people in, strangers, and people that were not experts at computers, and we sat them down and said, what do you think? Or gave them a task without telling them how to do it. And, you mentioned the date thing.
Yeah.
I think they put themselves into that corner because the default page has so much on it. Nobody asked to have 30 videos.
It is quite an overload. Actually.
So before that update, they didn't have as many thumbnails, so they weren't. They're creating their own load, and now they're trying to fix the load without fixing what broke it.
So they brought it on themselves.
Right. And Greg, I'm thinking back to some of the interface guidelines, even as far back as Windows 3.0 and 3.1, about the maximum number of menu elements that are visible at a time, the maximum number of screen objects that are available at a time, which I believe was 7 or less that was recommended at that point. I mean, clearly Google with YouTube is kind of violating that perspective with kind of interface explosion.
Right.
Is that to their detriment from a human interface perspective? Forgetting about performance, where you have to go and actually get information on each of those objects before displaying them on the screen.
Yeah, and it's just it's hard to believe that some people went through a focus group and decided this was good. And we're seeing a lot of decisions like that, even at the API levels, where Twitter buys TweetDeck and then kills it. Did they ask the users if that was what they wanted? So it's not just performance or whatnot, but I just wonder if they're talking to the end user very much.
Was it just
anymore.
like a marketing decision that they wanted the user interface on YouTube to look more like Facebook?
No.
Where you would have all these things, and then after a certain point, it's no longer identifying dates. It's just saying a while ago or a month ago.
Which is odd, because Google
Minimalist.
built their reputation on an absolutely minimalist interface.
Mm-hmm.
Google, the query line, that's it. Which is why people abandon MSN and the query line there, because you had to load the whole page, and Yahoo, even Alta Vista, as simple as it was more complex than Google was.
Hey, Metacrawler.
And by the way, we should wish
Yes.
Alta Vista has been end of lifed.
Yes, it's done.
By Yahoo.
Thanks, Marissa.
We should.
That's great. Totally respectful.
Yeah, if you want to
respect your elders, right? That's what they
if
say.
you want to thank her for that, go right ahead. But I'm not going to. But I think we should all at least give a note of respect to Alta Vista and the
maybe a
path
a moment of silence.
The path
Just
that
a
they
moment of silence.
blazed as a revolutionary.
Just a moment of silence for Alta Vista.
Chewie, I know I'm supposed to not contradict a Wookiee, but it was a moment of silence. You should not have said something.
Don't knock him for being a Google user. Come on. All right. So back to your point. I'm wondering if they actually, it's the wave, right? There's innovation. New innovation becomes sort of old hat, which then it repeats itself. Like, you're technically going to repeat yourself. So I'm wondering if you're right. They sort of did it to themselves by optimizing the page where it's still loaded pretty quick. We're probably miles away from where YouTube's hosting, if not more than miles. And so they optimize it so that they can load up more stuff. And then if you follow Steve Souders' rules, one of the first rules, I think the first rule, is do less, make less calls. Well, technically you can make less calls, but present more stuff to your end user. And that begs a human factors concern, right? I'm actually annoying you or driving. You got to be careful with that. I think if I hear you, it's like this gets
it's not just the case of maybe Steve Jobs' influence, which I'm sure is not that big, but it's almost like it's their Windows 8.
Sure.
Where Office is so good, but we got to find something to do because that's how you keep those people employed. And I don't want to be that cynical.
Yeah.
But it seems
No, that's okay, Greg. I think
we can be
all,
cynical.
We've all had this discussion about
three
Windows
Microsoft
8.
employees here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, right, but I'm saying that the current YouTube is Windows 8. It was fine before, but every 3 months.
I don't know that you should be insulting like that, but
they deserve it.
I think I know where you're headed, but
so basically every 3 months they have to change it because that's what they have to do. And it's not necessarily an improvement for the user.
Well, I don't understand this because, YouTube is owned by Google, so you think they would get a high rank in the Google index no matter what.
Yeah.
Without having to make the changes.
Don't have to optimize.
Well, that's nepotism. We want to stay away from that, right? That's fine. But I think, Martha, to your point, you use the word marketing.
Yeah, I was going to say the alternative is this psychological experiment with getting people disassociated from time. Because if all of your YouTube
like
videos,
casinos.
Hell yes.
Oh,
If suddenly you can see 30 instead of 5, right, and none of them are associated with a particular date and time anymore, much like Facebook. You spend a lot of time on Facebook, and everything's like gets very vague.
From one video
after
to
a
the
while.
next video to the next video.
A month ago, a while ago.
And then you spent more money.
I think they just want to suck you in and keep you there.
Could be a saturation technique.
I like it.
It's a slot machine.
Or we're
It could
all
be.
Cylons.
To your point, Greg, we did find through the product forums in Google, the product forums for YouTube, you can switch to the list view, but it's not the default, right? You have to go to some special steps to get to a list view where you see the date. But they made it not the default. Could be for performance reasons, or it could be for eyeballs on the screen. Dare I say a marketing advertising term, mind share.
Oh.
Eyeball, mind share.
Well, I don't want to short circuit that, but let me short circuit it.
Go ahead.
In the default view, it does tell you how long the videos are.
That's true.
So there is time involved, just not when it was created.
Oh, yes, exactly. That's exactly right. So we have. I'm going to kick off another question here, and we're just to let you know, we're going to keep broadcasting as long as we have energy and we don't become inebriated too much for 4th of July here. I have a couple people online. Jean Ann Harrison is a good friend of ours, works with mobile performance. She's often presenting with STP. She poses a question out of the blue. This is quite kind of a challenge for us, I'll say. What do you guys think about with regards to performance for companies that have high security measures in place? So testing performance and security together, or where do they overlap? We've had this conversation talking to Rafa Loos from HP, who's a security evangelist, I think, for HP. So I'm curious what we haven't really done a security and performance kind of.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is something that I see quite often, which is this issue of account integrity under load. If you don't have unique data in your accounts and you request an account under load, how can you tell that you're receiving the actual account data back? I actually audit quite a few performance tests, and I mark the performance tests down if all the accounts have the same data, because I don't know if there's any bleed over. And I've actually been involved in performance tests where under load, all of a sudden you get the account data for someone who's not yours. It's an accident that happens. It's not anything that's in the test design. It's just that the system is responding with the wrong data. And you definitely don't want that to happen. So from a security perspective, there's a crossover at that point of being able to take a look at logs, at how the system is responding under load. And I think it's a critical component that's often missed because performance, let's face it, is the last 100 yards at the end of the track before deployment. And security, most of the time, is interested in operations and looking at what's happening in production. there needs to be some coincident time there where the security analysts have a chance to at least examine the logs and look at what happens with traditional penetration techniques under load, where the system is under stress, may not be able to respond. DDoS, SQL injection, things of that nature that may be more susceptible under load, where the system can't respond to validation techniques on field values fast enough, but it can actually process what's in the field. So I think there's rationale for that. The two disciplines don't often cross, quite frankly, in most cases, because the CISSP security professionals feel that they're more professional than the performance professionals.
Well, they do. I think, from the maturity of that.
And the reason why is that a decade ago they decided to get together and do a standards definition of what it takes to be a security professional.
Yeah, it took a decade just to get that together. With actual support from the government. They also...
Well, it actually took a decade before they became an ANSI and other standards. So, but that's a path that a couple of different orgs, I think, are on in the performance space. Set a common body of knowledge, allow people to mature in that common body of knowledge, and things of that nature. But we're clearly a decade behind the security professionals. But we do need to interface with them more, and we need to allow them an opportunity to run their active interrogation methods under load, at least once we validate that the system actually loads and scales, or scales under load.
Right.
So there's a missed opportunity there in most cases, and Jean-Ann, I'll apologize to you personally for that.
Yes, that's right. But I think she brings... Now, Jean-Ann, remember, the context is she's a mobile performance kind of person, mobile testing person. So she's looking at the vulnerabilities of a device within the edge of that. You can't really grab... I'm saying there's a vulnerability in the copious number of strange devices and things that are happening, which what we used to call the edge of the network, right? So there's new vulnerabilities that are creeping in the OS layer and the app layer on these devices. So from a mobile perspective, I'll say to Jean-Ann that I don't think we do enough from a performance perspective to overlap these things. In particular, there are infrastructure items like sockets. So we could load up a switch to slow it down where socket management would actually get latent and you could actually steal an access. Like grab a port and grab a socket and actually get into a system before the actual client disappeared. And I think a lot of that has happened through compute power. Those are not really the issues anymore. The vulnerabilities are logical vulnerabilities with, say, SQL injection or something else. I think we're going to see people that have done a lot of shortcuts on getting a mobile app, and they're making Swift files, a lot of flash technology. You don't see that on the Apple, but you see it now with HTML5. What kinds of new vulnerabilities are going to be HTML5 running on Greg's device right there? For all we know, he's completely unsecure. Performance-wise,
I would guarantee that Greg
very
is completely unsecure.
Yeah. So, but I mean, we've got. I think to Jean-Ann's point, we've got a lot more investigation to do on how do these logical vulnerabilities in an app become more vulnerable, if I can say that, under highly latent situations. And so, how does this code behave? Right? How can I break it? What are the boundaries? When is something in the OS, in the kernel, for a mobile kernel, for the mobile OS, when is it going to abort certain connections? What are the thresholds that'll actually kill a connection when it's too late? And when is it going to drop stuff? So there's a lot of retries and hold on to a connection and that kind of stuff. So that would be really good. Another famous person in testing in general and performance, actually one of the original founders of the Whopper, James Bach, is on Skype with me here, asks an interesting question, which is a common rant between James and also Gorenka Biedov, who is at Whopper. I mentioned Gorenka's Facebook piece. And he sort of puts out there that there are, James, you'll love this, because he basically throws out there core skills of performance testing and modeling and data analysis are that these are the core skills, but the first thing people talk about in performance testing is tools. Well, he didn't say tools, but I
wish we could have a camera in this case, because I'm sure my face is turning purple at this point.
People push the tools and they don't push the fundamentals, right? You talk about foundation
The
skills.
tool is really 5 to 12% of the job. It's a critical skill. If you can't do it, then you're screwed. But that other 88 to 95% is foundation skills. It is development, it is architecture, it is communications, it is project management, it is testing. I cannot tell you how many times I go online to a public forum and I see someone weak in testing skills and they have been handed a nuclear device to point at whatever they want to point it at
Yes.
and pull the trigger.
That
Yes.
happens to me all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Whenever you're playing around with
Every
nuclear
freaking day.
devices?
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing happens in driving. Here is a 2,000 plus pound vehicle that has 280 horsepower and oh, by the way, inertia. You remember inertia, right? Yeah, inertia is great, but it'll kill you.
I'm a big fan of entropy, personally. Entropy.
Well, it takes a lot longer.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what the stopping distance is on entropy.
It depends upon the mass of the vehicle.
I don't know.
And the speed.
Exactly.
Oh.
Mark, what just happened?
What is that? This is a national performance alert from the National E-Commerce Performance Awareness Center in Monroe, North Carolina. A seasonally recurring storm of shopping cart traffic has been reported in the Pacific Ocean near Australia, moving eastward at an accelerated pace. This system is expected to arrive at websites located in the United States in mid-November, specifically arriving shortly before Friday the 22nd of November and will continue until 10 p.m. the Monday 25th. The extreme risk of this storm will include exploits of the large-capacity, persistent shopping cart object vulnerability, resulting in the crash of all existing website application servers, excessive garbage collection, and difficult return-to-service peak seasonal online commerce activity. The following counties are affected by this event will be Aberdeen, Boot Camp, Carpenter, Davenport, Faulkner, well, actually every county all the way up to Ziebach County in South Dakota, so A through Z. The NEPAC storm experts, around the table right here, are recommending that all sites prepare well for this event by emptying existing persistent shopping carts more than 100 items or more than 100 days old. This concludes the National Performance Alert.
Holy crap on a cracker! This is the first time I've heard an actual alert other than a test of the emergency alert system. So Mark, what you're saying is we have a 100 by 100 rule on shopping carts, which is anything older than 100 days or any shopping cart larger than 100 on a persistent state, get rid of it. Otherwise, we face a risk in production as we approach the holiday season where a large shopping cart could be loaded from memory, actuated on, and then when it's abandoned, we have a stop the world garbage collection or something of that nature.
It's as if you knew the alert was going to happen before it came out, James. It's kind of giving it away. You're repeating yourself.
Oh, well, my bad. I'll go have another drink now.
No, you should. You would have some more wine. Oh, no kidding.
Now I've got you on my back and Mark on my back.
Exactly. So just
holy
pipe down
crap!
over there, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Where were we? We were talking to James's point about tools.
Yes.
James about tools.
Yes.
Mr. Bach.
I've never had an opportunity to meet Mr. Bach in person.
You should.
So at STPCon, we should figure out a way to meet up or something. But I absolutely agree. The challenge that we face in the industry today is that all the people that are hiring for tool skills, and they're really ignoring those foundation skills related to what's between the ears versus what's on the resume. Between the margins.
I would even say in the hands, right? So we focus on how, a lot of interviews that are experiential I'll even if you're going to do a test period with a talent, let's do 2 months of you working hands-on, but we may never ask that level of performance person in testing to answer the question why. Like I didn't really do a good report or analysis on a bottleneck as to why that might be an important bottleneck or not. It actually might not even be a bottleneck according to the context.
And Mark, that kind of gets to some of the shows we've had earlier about how to acquire performance talent and things of that nature, where I think you do some of the similar. I go after foundation skills. I would rather not discuss tool skills for an hour or more into the interview, and this really disturbs many candidates who are absolutely prepared by studying every single question they can find online about, load runner interview questions or wind runner interview questions or JMeter interview questions. And then they come in and they're being asked about testing.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they're being asked about architecture or development or communications or optimization of the front-end web client a la Steve Souders. Or something related to the discipline, but it's not the tool. And I know I've been told by our HR rep that I've had people that just do not want to continue the process. They're so disturbed by the fact that they came in with one expectation and they got hit with something else that they're not even comfortable continuing. They're just... They don't feel comfortable with their skills at that point.
Yeah. So
and plus, I kind of deadpan the interview, so they don't know if they're giving a correct answer or not. Anyway, so that's a completely separate issue. But
yes, that's exactly. Well, I mean, we had a show where we talked about the actual cognitive thinking skills, comparative. Actual things you would do in performance analysis. Go back and listen to the podcast. Performance analysis. We didn't talk about how to open a graph in LoadRunner or how to open a thing in JMeter and publish a report and send it on to somebody without the context. So to get back to James's point, really kind of one of the main engineers behind the whole concept of context-driven testing or I guess the original term would be the H word, right? Heuristics, the heuristical testing. But I think it is, if you don't understand that context and you're communicating a number. James, the CPU was 64. Do you know what are you going to do? I tell you it's 64. Are you going to scream? Greg, the CPU was 64. Greg, what are you going to do?
Buy another CPU.
Okay.
Why? Do you know why?
I have budget.
No, and the tool doesn't tell you why. The tool just tells you 64, and then we're going to argue over whether the tool which one is the most accurate at 64. Is it 64? Is it 63.84? Is it 64.106? Which tool is the most accurate versus the tool that helps you at all figure out why you're reporting
the tool
that number
which is the most accurate
response, right?
Is the one that I used in college in my senior year, which I'm now using as a part of my job today, and it really doesn't matter what other tool exists, it's that tool.
Exactly. So to James's point, there's too much emphasis.
James Box's point.
James Box's point. James Box's point would be, there's too much emphasis put on the tool. And that's commercializing what we do as a discipline, and we could spend 80% of our time just on the mathematics, the engineering,
and by the way, we should blame some vendors on this.
There's a few vendors that
I'm going to reserve the right not to name the vendor, but any vendor who uses the phrase any business analyst can do this job, and then does a demo of a tool.
Some business analysts can do this job.
This is like chasing a singularity. The market will engineer a less effective business analyst, all the way to the point of a gravitational singularity that will pull your organization to the ground.
Yes, I agree. But that would mean you would cross an event horizon to be pulled into a singularity.
But speaking of being pulled to the ground, I would just like to point out that at this point Chewbacca is drunk and on the ground, and there's a photograph to post on Twitter to prove it.
All right.
And who is to blame for that? Vendors? You people?
James, he's the one that provided all the accommodations.
I guess Chewbacca
Who
is
is
taking
stepping up?
advantage of my hospitality.
Is that what's going on?
And that would explain some of his comments during the show today.
Yeah, he just bursts out with this stuff. Yes.
I don't know what you say to that.
Yeah, all right. I'm posting it to Tumblr.
You know, there's nothing worse than a drunk Wookiee.
Good. No, there are a lot of worse things than a drunk Wookiee, but I haven't personally encountered them yet. Greg, any thoughts on tools? I mean, you're a fellow historical Microsoft engineer, supporting person. What do you see as the evolution of tools? Now, maybe not even performance-wise, right? I mean, if you're an IT person today, how do you get your job done? How do you select a tool?
Well, I have to be honest and say that I'm really not paying attention.
Well, that's 4th of July.
Well, you know, the tools industry is big. It's hard to put your arms around.
Well, it used to be for the person that was under the hood. You were looking at I can't even remember the name of the tools. Sys something. Remember these people that Microsoft bought? Sys internals.
Yeah.
That's things like that. Yeah. And but now not so much for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, but if you were let's say you're an Origin C programmer, right? You understood how to take a dump of the process. Look at the threads. See if you had threads. You're going to look at threads, see what's happening. You're going to see. That's right. But I mean, we had a way to profile that code and figure out exactly what was happening in the stack, right? So same thing happens in all the modern frameworks.
Actually, Greg is more of a VB programmer.
I'm a skunk works. I'm not
really.
To be honest,
right?
To be honest,
you're
with
running
you,
P code in production. It's horrible.
To be honest with you, I'm not a programmer.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm a solutions provider.
He built a solution involving VB.
Involving VB.
So with tools, that was my tool.
I think there was a time when I started, and maybe to some younger kids that are I'll say kids because I'm old now. Kids in technology, they see things as if I can just pick up, because they don't have any tools under their belt. If I can pick up this one environment, this one tool, I can start creating a career, right? So as you get going, you'll maybe add another tool and another tool and another tool, and there's a lot of money to be made on going to an organization and saying, here's the one tool that all of your newbies
Well,
need
that
to
gets
use.
back to James Bach's comment about tool-centric versus
foundation skills.
Skill-centric, yeah.
Exactly. So I think we're advocating that you need a mix of both. You need some tools, but don't believe that the tools are going to solve all your problems, right? Understand that the tools, if they're a good tool, they actually help you do the best effort in your foundation mathematics skill. If you're going to display a graph, say, for transactions per second or response time or an overlay, then the tool actually makes it easier to do that core mathematical task for analysis, per se. Or for constructing the workload profile for performance, right? Mimicking or simulating a particular workload in a repeated way. The tool actually helps you do that, versus the tool being this huge obstacle that you need to master a private language, and there's the magic black dust consultant that you have to hire to teach you. James got a weird look on his face. You know what I mean? The tool takes
I'm just like magic black dust.
Right? Yeah. I thought that's what James was.
He was. You do look like dust. But honestly, if you can keep it simple, and I think a lot of open source tools sort of keep it simple, there you go. It doesn't. You have to put the pieces together, but you have to know why you're doing what you're doing to put the pieces together. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. James, just you have some other comments to make. What do you got here? Oh yes, that's the IT room. You can post that to Tumblr if you want. It'll be fine.
Well, I was just thinking.
We're getting on the show here. By the way, thanks James Bach for sending us this great stuff.
Yes, it was a pleasant surprise.
And Jean Ann.
Given that it is July 4th, and we've been talking about being an independent, I think it's also...
Of which both Jean Ann and
James
Bach are both independent, and they're kind of senior folks, right?
And Scott Moore.
And Scott Moore,
who we also spoke with. I think we need to talk about being a revolutionary in some respects. There are a lot of yes people in our industry. They will go into a meeting, they will nod, they will nod, they will nod, and they will not rock the boat. They will not deliver bad news, no matter what happens.
Be more specific about bad and news.
To be a performance engineer, you are a rational scientist, and you should be allowed to deliver news which is against the expectation or against the service level agreement. And in this case, to be a revolutionary is to be for exceptional high quality, highly defensible performance test, as opposed to click a button, hand in a report. You want the value add. You want, as Mark and I were discussing yesterday, you want to wear the beret. You want to have the little flag. You want to have the T-shirt that shows your copy of your performance tool of choice in the hand of Che Guevara, or your image on the T-shirt. You want to be the revolutionary related to quality. You want to be the revolutionary related to delivering results for your people, as revolutionaries often claim that they want to do. Maybe not all true, but at least that's what they claim. So at least adopt that mantle and go for it. And you should be the revolutionary for performance and quality. If you are not the revolutionary, if you're not going to step out into the void, if you're not willing to catch bullets and accept arrows in the pursuit of higher performance and higher quality, you know what? You may not be the right person for the job. You might be a good tool mechanic. You might be able to whip out a great script. You might be able to run a sound test. But if you're not willing to catch bullets on occasion and actually fire a few back, get a different front person. Put someone else on the flag. Put someone else on the T-shirt. Let you be the person that supplies the munitions and the food and everything else behind the scenes to support them. But you need to have a revolutionary at the front, because let's face it, your management expects, in many cases, because you're that last 100 yards, a yes person. Check box. It performs, go to production. They're not budgeting for anything else.
Yeah, exactly. They're also saying, if I budget for this tool, it will solve all my problems.
Exactly.
So just buy this tool, and that will happen. And I think if you meet a great vendor, even a salesperson within that organization that says, we're only part of the solution you have to bring your best people to the table, great people with great cross-group collaboration skill, people with great interpersonal understanding of both human factors. I think, Greg, to your point about user experience and usability is key, right? So I understand the real-world experience as well as the back-end technology. Architecture type skills, fundamentals. Boy, that's a rare engineer nowadays, right? A lot of folks age up and age out. And so finding those people that will say, look, I want to have 4 to 5 years experience, to Scott Moore's point, right? 4 to 5 years experience. I'm going to be able to know all these things across the stack. He or she's going to be able to relate. This transaction means this importance to the business, to an end user sitting at the other end of the transaction of the.
And if they show up with wearing a beret with a mustache and goatee, they're probably in the know.
My point is, just being interdisciplinary or being collaborative seems revolutionary in and of itself nowadays. The companies I've been working with, you're hiring younger people that are kind of siloed. Like I say, if you're just starting in your career, you don't have a huge scope. You're just trying to learn the thing with the blinders on to get it right in your little world. It's going to take several years before you get a wider scope. So I remember working at Microsoft that there was a time when technical people got promoted into management. And
how do you really feel about that, Mr. Kudos?
There wasn't really a technical track. When I actually got there and was working as a full-time, there was sort of, you could be a technical track, you could be a management track, and they each had skills, but they didn't blindly promote technical people into management positions, and that seemed to backfire. So one of the things, if you want to technically expand your scope and actually learn lots of different parts of the stack, the architecture, databases, apps, web, the infrastructure, network, cloud, and translate it all back to a product manager or a technical product owner, performance is actually a great place to start working on that. Don't get confused. Even if they give you a title of architect or they give you a title of something else, if you use the word performance, and unfortunately maybe not the word testing, even though I think testing deserves more respect in that, people call themselves performance engineers now. Call yourself a performance engineer, you'll probably hook up with an architecture team of some sort, and away you go. You could be in ops, you could be in development, you might be in QA, but away you go in that broader scope. But you can stay technical and be specialist, valuable, right? And be a revolutionary. I think we're still rare enough as a division of testing and a division of IT that just by saying I'm a performance engineer, you're already a revolutionary. I don't know. That's my rant. That was a little rant. That was a small rant, wasn't it?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus. Right on, man.
Oh. Chewy, have another drink.
I think we're going to, he woke up just to make that comment. And I don't take kindly to being called that, especially on the air. You know what I'm saying? Just let's we'll take that. Yeah. That's fine. All right. Okie dokie. Yes, Greg.
I have a question.
Greg has a question.
How has the industry evolved as far as testing, say, over the last few years to allow these boutiques or solo practitioners versus hiring a large firm to do performance? You guys have been at some pretty large companies for being relatively small. Has it always been that way, or has that been something that we've seen change in the last 5 or 10 years?
I think the trend began with Y2K. You had a lot of offshore work come in, particularly on the manual functional testing on Y2K, and that then transitioned to these firms offering to their customer base performance work. And what we've seen is that the trend, if you're an offshore provider for the most part, is you want to present performance work as a highly commoditized skill. You want to embrace the vendor's message of any business analyst can do this, because that means that you can capture the business and you can actually charge commodity rates. But the problem is that these organizations typically are not hiring for foundation skills.
Yep.
They're not training very well. There's no mentoring process to bring people up to speed.
They might be training and mentoring well within the context of what they define as
a commodity skill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
But
they have a great program and it looks great in PowerPoint, but actual effectiveness.
The actual effectiveness at the job is really. I guess the best way to put this is to take a look at what's happened in the performance testing discipline over the last decade, really since Y2K, is that over that period of time, this 13 years, we've had demand going up. We've even had cases of positions being open for well over a year and rates dropping. Now, the only way that we can have this economic condition occur, and I asked a guy I went to school with who's an economist to do a study on this, talk to customers, and he found that the actual value being delivered by the vast majority of organizations out there, particularly on the we can do everything side of the house, was so low that it was offsetting the natural tendency of prices to rise in a resource scarce condition. It's a very odd economic condition. It happens very rarely, but the number of providers is providing such low value overall that it's driving rates down even when you can't find them. And there are people who are leaving our profession on the other end of the spectrum. We have individuals who are retiring, they're leaving the profession, and in some cases they're passing away, not going to any profession. So we have the really talented resource pool diminishing, we have demand increasing, we have rates falling. And there's also another influence on that, which I think is purchasing organizations, where purchasing organization members are being incentivized to actually hire at a lower rate as long as they're receiving the same message from competing vendors.
Yeah.
And Mark, do you want to speak to that?
I can tell you from being inside HP and Mercury and thinking of it this way, there's a lot of pressure to understand, to perceive performance generally as a market as being commoditized, so it doesn't get that much attention. A lot of analysts don't cover it in an exclusive way, and so the talent doesn't really track that way. So they'll take folks who are trained very well as functional testers, or even in negative testing, whatever subtlety you want within critical thinking about testing and code. Performance, the temporal aspects, the time-based aspects of a functional testing get lost, right? So the idea that you test for a state, a button is enabled or disabled, gets tested at one point in time. It doesn't get, the conceptual effort of that test is not extended temporally to say, what does that state do over time? And either through repetition or through sampling, however you're going to do that. So some of the things that are happening in terms of the emphasis in what we would call traditional QA have been dramatically changed over the time for independents. The folks I see at CAST conferences, STP conferences, if they're going independent, they usually are reaching that seniority level, again, greater than 5 years experience, and they're starting to mentor and teach others. Or they're working on behalf of a small consulting firm that's actually starting to help set the bar for folks coming up in the industry. I'll still say there are big shops, your Accentures, Deloitte, I'm trying to think of some of the other, any of your larger accounting, IT consulting firms, bigger than your middle of the road players, your Oracies or Genalogics, right? Those guys have very large outsourcing capabilities. And then Cognizant, we've worked great. James and I were a great contract recently with Cognizant, and they brought really their A team, and they had fantastic raw skills, actually. Some of them had really impressed us, actually, with their foundation skills, but they were still lacking some practical experience in how do I really get along with not just the de facto way to do performance testing, but how do I fit into this customer, this organization, these
and then
end
there was
users, or this culture? Yeah,
the revolutionary
and
aspect that
value.
they weren't willing to push back when customers said, I need 2 scripts by noon, which was 4 hours away, which was really a 2-day effort. So, oh yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, and the person
quality
asking for
suffers.
2 scripts doesn't know whether it takes 2 scripts or 4, and it's not about scripts. It's not about scripts. It's about what does it take to get the data, to make the decision and evaluate the thing you want to evaluate. So in that evolution, things have not changed much from there are big players and there are small players, but I do think from in terms of revolution, small players are seeking that independence to celebrate July 4th Independence Day. They're seeking that independence so that they're not chastised by a larger organization for being challenging. So here's the shout out I will give to any of the colleagues out there, folks listening. If you have a desire to speak truth to power, to stick it to the man, right? Jack Black, thank you. That was School of Rock. Thank you. School of Rock. If you don't live hardcore...
By the way, Martha is standing up and giving,
the School
high
of Rock.
five,
Yes, exactly.
School of Rock.
It's a school. Yeah, anyway. If you're not going to live hardcore for performance, then you're not hardcore. Thank you very much. That's my interpretation.
You can't be hardcore unless you live
cannot
hardcore.
be hardcore.
Is that what you're saying?
Performance.
Is that what
unless
I'm
you live
feeling you?
hardcore?
Okay.
Performance. That's
All
right.
right.
Let me
All
get that straight. Thank
Okay.
you. The sexy Irish voice of PerfBytes helping me out there. But you get what I'm saying, right? I mean, there will be a time when just commoditized, not a lot of value, kind of doing the basics, and usually maybe misleading companies into test results that aren't accurate. That's unpopular. And you see customers that I'm working with recently that are like, I'm not going to go the traditional route. I'm not going to go with LoadRunner and HP. I'm not going to go kind of, that's the de facto standard. Gartner says these are the top players. I'm going to, if there's a revolutionary vendor or company out there that says, I'm going to challenge the status quo, then independents will find a home there to say, we'll help you think critically about whether these tools are helpful, these practices are helpful. We are very critical of Agile. performance testing. Performance is often left out of Agile, but it has a wonderful home in Agile, right? And that was our other episode on Agile. So there's a lot of things happening, upheaval, since you worked at Microsoft a long time ago, the original waterfall disciplines that we followed in the early 90s. Even though everything may have changed methodologically, the human beings haven't changed. The experience of the end user hasn't changed, and the critical thinking skills required for basic mathematics and analysis haven't changed, right? Understanding a trend and extrapolating that trend, same skills.
Is this
right?
another rant?
Sorry, that was another
Another rant. That's the second rant.
By the way, Greg, great question.
Yeah, really great question, right? We may come back to that one. So, this is PerfByte Live, and we've been going for 94 minutes right now, which is a record. We've never done a show this long before, but we got to talking, and we're also drinking, by the way. I had, what did you give me, the Blue Corn bourbon whiskey?
That is a blue corn bourbon from Don Quixote distillery in New Mexico.
Don Quixote in New Mexico. That was very good. Greg's still rocking the Dr. Pepper over here.
And Chewy, what are you drinking? You got into the whiskey cabinet. Hey. You're not supposed to be into that scotch.
Put down the milk.
That's for Scott Moore.
And your droids are going to have to wait outside.
Your droids are going to wait outside. All right, that's very nice. Martha, you were having a Krupp Brothers Chardonnay, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, actually, not to belittle wine drinkers, but if you know your Chardonnays, this is a Russian River vineyard, many vineyards in Napa and Russian River. And Sonoma.
I'm a big
Krupp
fan.
Brothers. Big fan. Very
Yep.
good. James, you were having. Well, we gotta call this out. James is having Big House Red,
Big House Red.
which such a fond memory. There are pictures on the website. I'm going to post them again. Of you cooking salmon with Vamsi.
We need Vamsi to call
Vamsi,
in.
the originator of the persistent shopping cart.
Yes,
vulnerability.
he was the man who identified it. We need to give him due credit.
Vamsi Netla, yeah.
Mr. Just the brilliant insight there.
Yes, and nobody wanted to listen to that little guy.
No, they did not want to
ignored
listen
him,
to
and
him.
he said, "Wait a minute, I think I found something here." And sure enough, 150,000 items. In
That was
cart.
the cause.
Very good.
Being a revolutionary.
All right, so this brings us to the end, unfortunately, of the PerfBytes Live. Only because we're going to go off drinking more, and I think that we become incoherent.
Yay!
Yeah, that's fine. All right, that's good. There you have it. So, James, what do you feel like saying at the end of the 4th of July here?
Go blow something up. You know, that I'm in the South. We like fireworks here. So,
yeah, so some
go
sort
blow
of explosive of some sort. I would like to thank.
Although, if you are living in the Northeast, please do not take your firearms outside and fire bullets into the air because those things do come down.
No, they do. What goes up must come down. It's
yes.
a famous song, actually. I'll say thanks to Greg and Martha for joining us in PerfBytes Live, and Chewy.
Chewy, that's the last time you were invited.
That's the last time you were invited to PerfBytes. That was right. And thanks to Scott Moore for joining us for some great advice about getting started in an independent way. To the questions that were contributed from Gina and Harrison and James Bach as well via Skype. Thank you guys very much for joining, giving us great questions. Greg, that was a great question. Your last question, I might say as well.
And Mark, today's episode of PerfBytes has been powered by reruns of the television show Babylon 5.
Babylon 5?
Awesome.
That's an awesome... I have to say, I never got hooked on Babylon 5, but it's good.
It's good.
As opposed to the live episodes.
Yeah. Okay. You can, as usual, you can follow PerfBytes on Twitter at PerfBytes, PerfBytes. So basically do a Google search, you'll find us everywhere. Facebook fan page, Twitter feed, there's a Tumblr feed. We're on Spreaker.com. Thank you very much for Spreaker.com. You actually find references to us on SoftwareTestProfessionals.com, Software Test Pro, and STBCon. We'll be at STBCon actually in the fall, right?
Yep, October. In Phoenix.
Yeah, broadcast the show. So if you're going to STP, we may actually give you away another pair of shoes.
Simo, we're hunting you down.
Ben Simo, exactly. The quality frog himself will come to your house, and we're going to be doing some stuff there. Send them to ask@perfbytes.com.
And then we'll make Mark answer them.
I'll answer them and I'll be nice to you, I promise. No worries. Exactly. Any last thoughts on this 4th of July, Martha?
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Remember the Fourth Amendment on the 4th of July.
The 4th Amendment on the 4th of July. I don't know.
Or the first,
Or the
you know,
first,
whatever.
That's fine. James?
No, I'm good. Of course, I always want to thank my mother for tuning in.
Thanks,
We always have at least one live listener, and